The UFC is in such a unique position, right? And they have been for a period of time, but it is a massive example. Anybody that wants to do marketing or has ever studied any level of marketing, whether you were officially trained by an accredited university or you just want to do it on your own, you've all read the book Tipping Point, right? Everybody has read Tipping Point, Bleeding Edge, Cutting Edge. And one of the things about being first, particularly to this space, is the growth of the UFC, just their roster. It's so important to grow your roster, right? The most profitable way that you could possibly run a business, the absolute most profitable way. And I will tell you this from my Submission Underground games, which I don't try to rub in, but that was a cash machine. But the single best way, if I was to put a roster together, it was opposite. The whole crew that I had with me, I had to program them the opposite of what they are thinking, which is to extend and grow and get guys from Australia and get them from Europe and get the Russians, get the Americans and add more dates and do more shows. It was the opposite. I want 20 guys on the roster and that's it. I will take them from town to town. I will take those same 20 guys and I'll just keep putting them in different matches. So everywhere we go in every match and every way that we do it, the audience who has seen one of our events will be completely familiar with the entire card. And this wasn't Chael's idea. This was Chael's observation of Vince McMahon's idea. I just took what he did. You want a small handful of guys. Now, you can't do that in fighting. You can't do it in fighting because they get hurt. They're not interchangeable. They can't be tapped out on Thursday night and be at 100% and compete again on Saturday night. Just can't do that. In fighting, in grappling, they can. So you keep the roster as small as you can. Get all your travel budget, get everything in-house. You know exactly what guys are weighing, exactly what they're doing. You take it from one town to the next, and you're selling and selling and selling, right? It's just one of these situations. But I bring it to you. I bring it to you because the business side of this sport is so poorly understood, but every now and then you will have observations that the whole world can see. And one thing you'll never get from a guy that understands how to make money in combat, which there's not 10 of them on this earth. Right, and for good reason. You can't go to a college and major in it. You can't go to a library and check out a book. And anybody that can actually do it, the pains and hardships that they went through to buy that education. They didn't wake up knowing how to do it. They got their ass kicked to learn how to do it. It's just a closed-mouth business. They're just not going to pass that on. It's like gold mining. The difference between a guy with a hole in the ground and a guy that found gold, they'll never tell you. They'll never tell you. Oh, I got lucky, and they'll leave it at that, and they'll take it to their grave, only passing it to their son. So I'm trying to share with you, when you have something that's so obvious that you can observe, make sure that you do. The Affliction organization, Tom Atencio, very good friend of mine. I took no pleasure in seeing Tom and his hard work go down. Tom was scheduled in California, where he'd already done a $2.1 million gate. That was Fedor Emelianenko versus Tim Sylvia, but that is massive. That is a $2 million gate in MMA in 2007. This is massive. They come back. They don't have the world's biggest war chest. They started with something very nice, but they overpaid. There's a lot of talent, and they paid a premium to get them. They did a fantastic job. But there's still not a lot of room. They've got a big event. It's scheduled. It's going to go down on Saturday. It is fight week. Josh Barnett versus Fedor. They lose the main event. They canceled the entire event, but that cancellation with all the millions of dollars that are out there in marketing that you cannot recoup, bankrupt. You never saw them again. I only offer that example. I hope Tom doesn't see this. I'm not trying to open up an old wound. It was just a reality that those things are very fragile. They are on a string. You can do everything right. You can be a good, honest person that does everything right, and you can lose it all overnight in MMA. There's other cards and other events. There was a show that went off. I always get confused. You've got the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, but there's another casino. Is that called the WinStar? There's another massive casino out there, and this was at the other casino. So you had an event, and they were going to run the show, and they were even going to do pay-per-view. Now, it would have flopped. but they still have the connections. They got a beautiful venue, they got a solid card put together, and they have a distribution partner. Like, they've got the right pieces. With the commission, they had to have 6 fights. If you put on less than 6 fights, the commission can cancel your entire event. Now, you might ask yourself, why would they do that? Why would they harm a company? Why would they punish the other guys that still are on the card? I'm just sharing with you, they can do that. And on fight week, this event had 6 fights. They were down to 6. They lost 2. Now, their entire event from bell to bell, door to door, bring the crowd in, break them the bad news, and send them home pissed off is going to be 4 matches. And the commission said, no, we have a rule of 6. We've never bent on that rule. And if we were to do you a favor because you had 5, you have 4. You have a fraction of what we need. They canceled the event. And to this day, I can't even tell you the 3 initials that they were operating under. It was their debut show, and they went under. So when you have a situation like the UFC that was out of one of these bountiful rosters, it is a terribly difficult thing to honor all of those agreements. How are you possibly going to get everybody 3 fights a year when there's 11 fights, when you have events and you have 44 of those on linear television and 11 of those in a calendar year on pay-per-view? It's simple math. I have 767 athletes under contract. I have 56 shows, and 56 times 11 does not equal the same thing as 3 times 767, which is what I have to do to give each one of those guys their contracts, or I have to pay them should they call me on it. It's a very hard thing to do. It's a very risky business when you build your roster. You've got to be sure. And now you're not playing $1 million game, and you're not playing a $10 million game. You need hundreds of millions of dollars to cover the spread. Very risky. But the other side of it is you have opportunities to do what I feel the UFC's done, not only today with strengthening of the Madison Square Garden card. I feel they did it a week ago in Abu Dhabi times 2. Kamar Usman versus Chimaev was always the match. Volkanovski rematching Islam Makhachev was always the match. I mean, in hindsight, for both of those guys, right, you got to understand, Volk asked for the fight. He got told no. In hindsight, we should have just told him yes. Should have let him have that training camp. Should have let him come in prepared. Obviously, we had that one wrong. Volk had it right. But Kamar Usman also asked for the fight. Clearly, we had that wrong, telling him no. Little more to it. Contract wasn't quite there. Weight dispute. You understand my point? Clearly, Kamar's idea and Volkanovski's idea were better. And that card is extremely memorable. I wasn't overly looking forward to that event. I was going to watch it. I was going to take it in. I was going to do my part. Sure, I was. That was so memorable. That was really, right. The great cards are the ones that 5 years from now you remember, and no card you remember 10 years from now, right? For me to tell you 10, I'd have to go like Spinks versus Tyson was there, my lifetime. Hearns versus Hagler, twice were there in my entire lifetime where I could go back. If you ask me my own, hey, Chael, what year did you fight Marquardt? What year did you fight O'Connor? What year did you fight Anderson? I'd have to think and look those up. There might be some way that I could program it, but you just understand the point. You just don't remember things. I feel as though what we saw out of Abu Dhabi, because of the adjustment of the card, which strengthened it threefold, probably threefold for me in terms of the word anticipation, I will remember that in the future. I will remember what happened that night. When I am telling my kids' kids about Islam Makhachev, I will bring up what he did that night to Volkanovski. When I'm telling them the story of Kamar Usman and the courage that it took, or I'm telling about the legacy Khamzat Chimaev, I will bring up that night. And I feel as though, and I could go back, another great example would be Conor McGregor versus Chad Mendes. They had a projection for Conor versus Aldo. They had a projection for that, and it was going to be awesome. Chad Mendes versus Conor ended up breaking the projection. So in theory, and will be recognized as a bigger fight. And that's before that we knew Hillbilly Jim and Sinead O'Connor were going to put on a concert. That was all a treat. That didn't even help to move the needle. That just made the show that much better. So we now have that same ability where you have guys that can't fight or won't fight or get restricted from fighting, whatever the cause is, and you have the ability, because of the size of the roster, to make adjustments. It's a very big deal. I mean, you find out who wants to fight and who doesn't. Imagine what Volk did. Even imagine what Aspinall is getting ready to do. When's that fight, guys? It's in 3 weeks, November 11th. I mean, what's the date on? Today's like the 23rd, 4th, 5th, something along these lines. You've got the 11th. It's 2-3 Saturdays from now. Aspinall lives in a different country. Got to get his paperwork done. Thank God he doesn't have to cut weight. And thank goodness he's likely been some level of training. He's been a main event guy, so he probably always has his eye on that 5-rounder. But, I mean, I'm making a lot of guesses here. Pavlich knew the whole time he was going to do this. Yet Aspinall is the favorite. That surprises me too, by the way. I mean, I got to tell you, if you guys want some good action, I don't think that's going to hold up. I'm a little surprised that it ever happened. But Aspinall, right now as I'm talking to you, over at DraftKings, I'll share this with you, though. I do feel that it keeps getting stronger. I do feel that it keeps getting better. But when you do have certain athletes that are offered to do something and they're given ample time and they still say no, and then you have other guys who are not in an ideal situation, but they never talked about it. They never cared about it. You don't know how he feels. You don't know if his leg's good that just put him out for a year. You don't know if his shoulder's good, his head's right, his coach is ready, his mother wants him to do it. You don't know a goddamn thing. All you know is he got a phone call with an opportunity. He said the only word that matters, which is yes, and he put the phone down. Meanwhile, you have guys getting a scratch over their eye and pulling out of world title opportunities, right? Some guys are better. Some guys are better athletes than others, but some guys are actual fighters and some guys aren't.